This episode is sponsored by The Alcohol Experiment, a free 30-day challenge designed to interrupt your patterns, give you control, restore your health, and put you back in touch with the version of you who doesn't need alcohol to cope, relax, or enjoy life. More than 220,000 people have already tried The Alcohol Experiment for themselves and have seen improved sleep, increased happiness, reduced anxiety, and so much more. Join thousands in this inspiring, hopeful, and exciting program where you examine your beliefs and reconnect with the best version of you without ever feeling like you're missing out. Start today for free at alcoholexperiment.com. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to This Naked Mind podcast. And I'm here with Laura. Hi, Laura.
Hello again.
So awesome. So if you don't know Laura McKowen, you absolutely should. She is a host of a podcast, Tell Me Something True, which is one of my personal favorites. It's amazing. And the author of the book, We Are the Luckiest, which again is just so incredible. Laura, you're such a talented writer. And you've been on before. So this is like—
I've been on twice.
So yes, twice. So exciting. So we will link the episodes that Laura was on previously in the show notes. But today we're actually going to talk about something totally different. And so do you want to frame it out, or do you want me to frame it out? Or
Do you frame it out? Maybe say why you wanted to talk about it.
Okay, awesome. So
yeah.
So here's the thing, is that no matter what we're doing, whether it's drinking or playing video games or, eating too much or more than we want to be eating, or whatever it is, we're often doing that, sports. My husband, his addiction is definitely knowing every single statistic in sports. Whatever it is we're generally doing some of these things in part. Some of it is fun, but there is a part of it that becomes, buffering agent. It becomes a way to insulate ourselves from the reality and from the world and from some of the, intensity in our own minds. And it actually becomes a way to really meet our needs. Like, alcohol, for example, met my need for significance because I could feel really special that I knew all the fancy wines and I could talk about different types of, I think bourbon was what I was into talking about at the time. And, so there was all this significance in it. And I had significance actually in the fact that I could overdrink, people around me, especially people who were sort of twice my age. And it met my need for variety because, I could try different things and you never knew where the evening was going to end you up, even though that was never pleasant. It was still meeting my need for variety. It meant my need for certainty because I was just like showing up there all the time. And there it was always in the fridge or always in the cabinet. And, I could kind of count on it. I also thought it meant my need for love and connection because I had this false belief that I couldn't actually socialize or be with people. And so these are the 6 human needs as outlined by Tony Robbins. But the idea is that if anything meets 3 or more of these needs, and the other 2 are growth and contribution and certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, growth and contribution. There's a 6th one, which I'm totally forgetting right now, but we'll come back to it. But if it meets any of those 6 human needs, then, or any 3 of them, it can completely become an addiction. It can become something that's really unhealthy because it becomes something that we go to all the time. And I have noticed that in myself around social media, specifically Instagram. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, what was happening is at first it was like, okay, we're all isolated in our house. So what had for me not been a really huge relationship with social media, it had been mostly like, okay, I'm going to have a page, I'm going to provide value, I'm going to be the brand, This Naked Mind, and kind of be on social media, all of a sudden became a very consuming relationship with social media. And I'd find myself getting on there for like 45 minutes at a time, out of the blue, out of nowhere, looking at the clock, like what happened? And then I'd find myself with all this anxiety because I was following all these like really inspirational people who were saying, it's quarantine. King Arthur was written during a large lockdown, write the next great American novel. And then I would also find like, take care of yourself, bake some cookie dough. So I just had this angst every time I would put it down. Like, I'm not doing enough. Oh my gosh, I should be taking more care of this. But like right then, by the way, in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're all just meeting our need for safety. And so for us to be even trying to push ourselves into some self-actualization was obviously going to create pain and discomfort. And so Laura and I actually just started talking about this and just talking about art. And I guess we were going through a lot of the same things at the same time.
Yeah, we were.
So
Yeah, no, yeah. So it's so funny because I haven't heard Tony Robbins list those 6 things, and as you're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, certainty, growth, connection, variety. Like it's a vortex of all of them. I mean, all 6. I don't know what the 6th one is, but the 5 that you mentioned,
Safety,
safety.
of course.
Yeah, all of that, of course. So what is it? Certainty, growth, connection, variety, safety.
So love and connection, variety, certainty, growth, contribution, and oh man, what was the other one? Hold on, I'm just gonna look at mine.
So all of these are in my experience of social media. It was there. I could go to it whenever I wanted, and I could make some kind of contribution. I could see the growth, right?
Yeah.
I could connect.
Okay, here they are. Certainty, uncertainty or variety, significance. Significance was the one.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and that is a huge one in social media. Connection and love, growth and contribution.
That's crazy.
And certainty and safety, I think, are the same thing. So certainty, assurance you can avoid pain and gain pleasure. Uncertainty, the need for the unknown, the change, new stimuli. Significance, the feeling of being unique, important, special, or needed. Love and connection, a feeling of union with someone or something. Growth and expansion of your capability and understanding. And then contribution, a sense of service and focus on helping and giving to and supporting others. Yeah. Tick, 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 tick.
Oh my God. Wow. Like all of that, all of those. So that's interesting. I hadn't heard that lens on it, but makes perfect sense. So yeah, I mean, I've had a very on again, off again, high, low relationship with social media from the beginning. I don't know that I would have I don't know if I would have sold my first book without it. I don't know if I'd have the sort of be able to do what I'm doing professionally now. It's hard to divorce that from what is, because I just don't know. It didn't go that way for me. Social media.
And how did it start for you, Laura? Like how did it start?
It started as a way to share my sobriety journey. Like it's important to note that this is 2014, 13, 14. It was not what it is now. Instagram is the thing that I focus on because that was my downfall. And for good reason. I learned like it speaks to us on the level of symbology and imagery, which reaches our subconscious a lot faster. So yeah, I used it though as a way to, I had always wanted to share words, quotes. I'm a word collector, to share my experience, but I didn't allow myself to have that platform. I didn't really have the capacity to be honest about my life. And what I wanted to talk about was my life, right? And so social media, my experience, but I wasn't being honest about my experience until I got sober. And it's like, oh, okay, here's the thing I actually need to talk about. And it was a perfect platform to do that, because here I can share what's going on today. I can practice writing. I can share words that I love. Everything was in there. And so it started as more of a personal thing, as a totally personal thing, actually. But as I started to realize that I wanted to be a writer and be a person who claimed that space, I would say within a year, and once I started to have some traction in writing, I started to get published in small places, and I had a blog that I would share, to my 10 people in my email list, and started to get feedback. But it was more the internal, I'm going to let myself want this. And as I started to get some traction in sobriety itself, it shifted to a professional blend of professional and personal. It's professional because I was building a platform, I would say, at that point, but it also personal because I was talking about my life.
Just to interject, I think that it's really important, as we talk about this journey and evolution, not to really discount the beauty and the benefit, because I mean, we met on social media.
100%.
So
Yes.
there's that.
That has always been, as the years went on and it started to change into something else for me, it was very akin to the process of addiction. First it's all fun, and it's all fun and some problems, and then eventually it became all problems for me. But it never left my mind that I met you, I can list probably 50 people that I connected to on social media. And these are real things, real, like, people that read my manuscript for my book and promoted it, that had platforms that I didn't have the ability to promote it like they could. Or even aside from the professional stuff, personal stuff. I mean, I have made true, honest, deep friendships through social media connections, lasting, important relationships. And so that is always there. And not to mention, there's all kinds of opportunities that would flood in. It's like, it's like going to a networking event every day.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of fun. And I was really good at it, and I liked it, and it played on all these things. I got to feel like I was making a contribution, and I was, like, some of that was also very real.
I mean, I remember posts of yours where I would read something that you had written, and I was always before we knew each other in real life, and still am, but I was in such awe of you, because I was like, like, how does she just sit somewhere? I imagined you just like sitting on a curb waiting to pick up your daughter, and just like writing these words that just like put me in tears and were exactly what I needed to hear. And they cut to my soul. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just feel seen, And so I feel, and I know that you did that for so many hundreds of thousands of people. And yeah, so there was some real beauty in it. And interestingly, I feel like you and I had the conversation repeatedly, and maybe I'm skipping ahead a bit, but we'll get into it, about, I'm like, well, how can you do both? And how can you do both? And how can you separate that part and keep doing this part? Because
right,
like, on a personal level, like, I've been just impacted by your words, and social media happened to be a really easy way for me to consume them. Yeah. Right. I'm not on it as much anymore either. So I don't, like, for me, it's very much like, I want to provide value and service in this Naked Mind accounts, but like, on a personal level, like, I've just kind of, stopped consuming as much. Yes. But at that time, I clung to some of the things you wrote, and I remember that really vividly.
Well, thank you. And I that was real. I loved doing that. I wasn't, there was so much of it in there, especially in the early years of sobriety, that like served a very genuine purpose for me. I was not performing. I was just someone who had been dying to write and dying to say the things that I wanted to use writing, and to use and to just exercise that part of myself. Had been waiting for 38 years to really do it, and that was a place where I could do it and I could practice it, and that was genuine and honest. And then and there's this other part of it, and then it also becomes something else. It started to, and these things were always there. My comparison tendency to compare, and this feeling of, you said, not doing enough. That was probably the primary feeling. I'm just not doing enough. Oh my God, there's so many things I should be doing. I'm not doing this, or like that not enough feeling is kind of always when I would exit out of social media, how I would feel. Fuck, like I'm not doing enough, So, and then the obsession with how I'm doing. Am I okay? It became for me like this soup, like the soup, there are some nutrients in that soup, but ultimately the soup made me sick, and I couldn't deny that it was making me sicker and sicker and sicker. And so I tried, I tried all the things to make it work. Like the conversations you and I had, have somebody manage it for you. Take, do it through an app. Only, never go on, never comment, don't scroll. And I just couldn't. Some of those things worked for a while, but it just didn't. I had to come clean on the fact that, just like alcohol for me, it wasn't worth it. But so the reason go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so how did that feel? Like, can you,
well, it felt like a few things. One, I felt like embarrassed. Like, really, you can't fucking handle a thing on your phone? Like, are you 12? There's that. Two, I felt like I had come so incredibly far I'm so courageous in so many areas of my life. The deepest part of me is very brave and courageous, and honestly doesn't get rocked much by what people say about me. And yet when I got on there, it was like I had no skin. I couldn't let a trolly comment or even a sharply put criticism haunt me.
So I have a theory about that. And then I want to hear how else this made you feel. First of all, the embarrassed thing, like, let's just talk about how similar that is to alcohol. Like, when we first realized that we don't have as much control as we'd hoped,
right?
Like, it's just like, oh, come on,
really?
What's wrong with me? Like, that's
the
where
liquid. Yeah,
this liquid in a glass is going to do this to me. That's so frustrating and embarrassing. And then we, hide from it for so long. And I know that one of the things both of us are very passionate about is just more normalizing that conversation. But so I have been trying to unpack for myself as well, like, why is it that I can even get in a verbal argument with somebody? Not that I do it often, but I've done it plenty of times, like, or have a disagreement with somebody in real life, or, but why is it that some unknown faceless person can say something that isn't even that bad? Like, I remember we had a live event, and of course we had a hashtag, and I was almost never on social at this point in time, but I was like, riding the high of the live event. I was like, it's so good. I just want to see what people said with the hashtag, right? And one comment was like, well, it's my second year in a row, and I just have to say, like, it was great in some ways, but a lot of the content was repetitive. And I'm like, okay, that's not even that bad, but it made me sick to my stomach for like a good 24 hours.
Yeah.
And what did I do wrong? Was it really repetitive? Did everybody feel this way? What was this? And by the way, that was one out of like dozens of comments I read that were positive. And I'm like, why is this? What is this illogical reaction? And so here's my theory. It's a little outlandish, but I think that without a face and without a human to ascribe that to, we have no way to justify it. So we can't say, oh, but that's just Mary. Mary's always upset with everything. That's just Larry.
No context.
There's no context. And so then we internalize it as if we're saying it to ourselves.
Oh, yeah. I think there's probably a lot of truth to that.
Because we can't put a face on it. There's no justification. We can't put it in a box. We can't compartmentalize it. And so there's no choice but us to take it on face value, because and by the way, even if we're reading the words, the vocalization of those words is in our mind with our own voice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's I'm sure that's very true. And, I battled with all of that. Like, really, you can't, like, are you that immature? Are you that fragile, that you can't take that? But the reality is I am a really sensitive person.
Me too.
My energy is really sensitive. I'm sensitive. It's part of what allows me to do the work that I do. And so instead of it more became, it's like so much, I continually, as the years went on, got fascinated at the parallels between alcohol and social media. like just parallel after parallel after parallel. And where did I land with drinking? You know, I kept saying that. And when I would focus on what I was going to lose by not drinking, which was a lot, and some of that stuff was real, I would feel nothing but kind of despair. But what I know from getting sober is that what I gained was infinitely more, and that I had to be okay with opening myself up to that mystery. Like, what would happen? What would happen, Laura, if you made yourself scarce on social media? What would happen if you didn't follow the prescribed equation? You know, you have to have an Instagram account, you have to have a Facebook presence, you have to do all these things if you're going to be a successful author, business owner. It's like, what? Well, okay, maybe not. Like, what would happen if I didn't follow those things? And so ultimately the decision was one of kind of jumping off a cliff and going, I don't actually know what's going to happen. But I had a horrible, if we can talk about it, because it's just interesting, like kind of relapse that happened this summer. And I woke up and thought, okay, I never want to feel this way again. 0 more times. This is a day 1, and I'm pushing off from here. And all evidence shows me that this is not something that's good for me. So I'm going to push off from here.
And what happened?
So I had reached a point where I was taking another break. Like, I just was going to tap out. I was going to take the summer off and just not be there. And what I noticed was, even having it exist out there, it's like people could still interact with my persona. And I hated that, you know, the avatar of me. So I would occasionally check. And then I launched a podcast, and it was like, how do you launch a podcast without fucking social media? Like, how am I going to tell people? You know, I have my newsletter, but it's like habit, you know, as someone who is used to using it, it's like you do this and then you do that and you do that. And, oh, there's this audience of 80,000 people. Like, I can just tell them. So I started to do that and just said, oh, it's coming. And then I got another book deal. I was like, I really want to talk about it. You know, it's like that need for significance, validation. I wanted it. And it's like, you know, it's right there. You can get immediate feedback. So much of this, I realized, was an addiction to being witnessed immediately, and to bypassing. In that process, I was bypassing the actual experience of whatever was going on, positive, negative, just like alcohol. Like, I was missing my life. So I decided to take a break, and I slowly started to edge my way back in, you know, like, oh, I'll just check here, do this. And then I was on vacation visiting my mom. I was with my boyfriend and my daughter, and, you know, in Maui. I hadn't seen my mom in over a year, and this like wonderful vacation that we'd been so looking forward to since the dark COVID days. And it was I was getting to bring my newish boyfriend to this place, and it was all really great. And I had this moment where I was sitting, I felt so much joy. And I don't know about what I know now about dopamine is that these high moments can be uncomfortable because you experience this drop. It's like muscle memory for you know, people who are prone to addiction. It's like, oh, I want to keep it going. How do I make this continue to go? You know, feel more, to deepen this moment of excitement and joy. I was like sitting outside. It was beautiful. I was reading a book. You know, my mom was in this crazy, beautiful, picturesque little spot. My boyfriend's there. My daughter's there playing with her friend. It was just like magical. And how can I make this more? Oh, I can share it on social media. and downloaded the app. And I had like just had a recent conversation with someone who told me their strategy for dealing with social media. And I was like, that's so great. I could just do that. Why am I making such a big deal out of all this? Downloaded it, posted, went on this long explanation of why I'm back, blah, blah, blah. And within 24 hours, I was nauseous, anxious, disaster feeling mess, like the worst hangover, anxiety. Because I went all the way back in. Like I went, I couldn't moderate. I was like checking the app under the covers in my, the room with my boyfriend, because I didn't tell him that I had gone back on, and he's seen what it does to me. And I'm, checking my follower, hundreds of people unfollowed me. And I'm like, oh my God, why is that happening? And, just the same shit show. And that was when I woke up the next morning and said, no, we're not doing this ever again. So yeah, I think it's interesting for me. And the reason I like talking about it so much is it also feels very much, or I feel called to talk about it. It also feels very much like alcohol did when I started to get sober. Like, this isn't just a Laura has a problem. This is a massive thing that's happened to our society in the past 6 years, where it's really proliferated into the way we function on a day-to-day basis, right? The way we interact with each other, the way we process our life experiences, the way we consume media and news and more. And then the Facebook thing came out. And I was like, oh, fuck it, I'm writing about this, And so I ended up writing this piece for the New York Times about it. And like, yeah, it's still, I have found like the thing that I want to talk about most, I think, is trusting your own intuition about what works for you.
Yeah.
And like, something doesn't have to, it's never all bad and all good. Right. But you still have to make decisions, sometimes really hard decisions. And I don't know where this will lead me. I have no idea. Like, I don't know if it's going to hurt when my next book comes out. I don't know.
It's amazing. Like, I have, so we have an au pair, and she's 25, she's Colombian, and she is an influencer on Instagram. In a way that is like, I guess, sort of products and stuff. I didn't know this until the first night she was in my house, because she didn't give me her Instagram handle before. And so she's been with us almost 2 years now, but the first night she was in my house, she gave me her Instagram handle, and I stayed up all night, and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I, because the person that she is on social is not someone I would ever want in my house. I mean, she's like, anyway, I won't even go there, but it's very different than somebody I would want in my house taking care of my kids, just the whole energy about it. Right. And then, so I'm freaked out, but then we get to know this woman, and she is the best. Her energy is pure and clean. She, doesn't drink ever, which was totally random. We didn't even expect or know that. She just doesn't like it. She really, truly cares about the kids. Like, she's just so silly and bubbly and thoughtful, and like, she doesn't ever wear makeup. And then you go on her Instagram, and it's just this painted, filtered. And so, in the last year or so, we've, she's been dealing with some anxiety, and I bridged the conversation a few times, like, well, tell me about Instagram for you. And she's like, well, I feel like you can't not. I feel like with me and my friends, you can't not. Like, I know I feel better when I don't. I know I take breaks sometimes, but it's like I disappear. Like, I disappear from everybody knowing what I do and where I am. And especially because I'm not actually present in my country with my friends, like I'm gone, and I feel like I'm gone. And I was like, well, but it's not you on there anyway. Like, anyone who knows you knows that the disparity between your persona and yourself is huge. And she so gets it, but she's so stuck. And when you were talking to me about this, I remember sharing some of this with you, and us just having the conversation of like, wow, this is so similar. so similar in like both wanting to do more and less of the same thing at the same time. So similar in feeling embarrassed about, why can't I control this? So similar in feeling like, well, everybody does this. This shouldn't be such a big deal. So similar from a neurological perspective in terms of the dopamine, right? But the thing that's really different is with alcohol. So alcohol artificially stimulates dopamine. But alcohol is also toxic to the body. So the body has brakes on alcohol. The body can say, whoa, 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 stop, to the point of having you throw up, by the way, to save your own life, because you've consumed so much, it will kill you if you don't throw up. And so you have to stop. There's actual brakes in the substance. The dopamine produced by gambling, pornography, social media, there's no brakes. You can scroll and scroll 100%. And scroll and scroll, and there's no break. So the amount that it changes your brain and how fast it does is really true. And so I would do experiments for myself where, and by the way, the significance thing, being on, whether it's a family vacation or you're just and you have those moments of downtime and you're like, but I have all these people, like these 80,000 people, they're just relying on me. I just have to check, and it's almost like you're being significant online, but you're being significant offline too, because then people can see how busy and important you are, right? Like,
and how much that performance actually eats away at the experience itself. That was another thing that just killed me when I realized it, because it's like I got sober to be in my life. And this is like blasphemous to every gift that I've been given, all the grace that I've been shown, all the fact that I'm still alive, and I'm going to destroy my presence by performing something. That was brutal to realize. You don't think that's what you're doing though, because it's so normalized into how when you I went out to dinner with a bunch of my girlfriends on Friday night. They're all taking pictures. I took pictures too, but they're posting them and spending time posting them. And like, what the essence of what happens? I don't know that it actually multiplies the joy.
Right.
I think it steals from it. I think it steals from those moments. And you were continuing to make a point, but what I noticed at first was that a lot of things sort of felt empty, just like when I got sober. And then eventually it was such a relief, like, oh, I can just watch a sunset. I'm not compelled to capture it because I haven't posted yet today, or to say something fucking profound about whatever it is.
And I remember that too, for me, especially like when I was like, okay, this just isn't working. And so I uninstalled the app. And I remember we were talking through all of this, but I uninstalled the app, and I remember just sitting on the living room floor with my 10-year-old and my 3-year-old, and they were making up a game. And my ability to be present in that moment was just obliterated. It was not gone. I felt like antsy and uncomfortable and then judgmental, because I was like, why can't I just sit here and enjoy my children? What is wrong with me? And it was so intense, that detox process of, and it really is detoxing from the dopamine response in the brain and allowing your brain to rebalance. And it takes weeks, by the way, so that then the dopamine that can come from making your daughter giggle, or, whatever actual pleasure you're having in your real life, can break through all of this, high level of dopamine resistance, because every time your body just wants to stay in balance. So if you overdo something like dopamine, it's going to build a resistance to it. And so then all these natural pleasures, just like alcohol, can't break through. And I felt that so profoundly. And I was like, oh, this is horrible, right?
Yes. And yes. And I started to learn about some psychological concepts that were really helpful, like Winnicott's false self and true self, and that the false self whenever we're performing a false self online or otherwise, it can get to be very scary actually for your psyche, because you're not grounded in reality. You don't feel real and tangible in the world. I mean, I remember, especially in the, real dark parts of 2020, feeling like the online world was the real world. Like I had to like do this adjustment when I re-entered back into my daughter, conversation with my daughter, back into a conversation with my boyfriend or my friends, just into nature. I was like, oh fuck, this is reality, but there's this entire world that I was always managing inside of this app. Like thousands of conversations, thousands of data points. And the amount of psychological data that can be embedded into one single post is more than we can handle. And that's just one post, right? Who commented, who liked it, who didn't, what did that person say, what kind of status does that person have, and what did they say about it, and what's the reactions to what they said, and who liked what their comment was, and then there's the actual caption of the post, and what are they saying, and what are they signaling, and what do I see there, and are they, it's just more input than we can psychologically manage.
So I'm sure you're really familiar with the Rumi quote, which is basically, I was trying to find it, but it's about the fact that we all already have self-worth, and we already like know and love ourselves. That's inherent. That's a given. Just because we're born, just because we breathe, we didn't create ourselves. Here we are. But then what we do is we put up blocks to feeling our worth. Right. And we put up all these blocks, and often the blocks that we put in the way of feeling our worth disguise themselves as things to increase our worth. But actually, in the act of trying to increase our worth, we are telling ourselves on a deeply subconscious psychological level that we're not worthy. So when you rely on external validation or to make yourself feel worthy, you're actually just reinforcing this subconscious belief that you're not worthy as you are. And so, that by nature, all of those things, like it taps into our insecurities, it taps into us judging ourselves and comparing ourselves to other people. All of the blocks that we put up towards feeling worthy are reinforced in this platform.
Yeah.
Right.
And at a really psychologically profound level, at a really psychically profound level. It's like, I don't know if they've studied the dopamine, response in social media. I'm sure that they have, but like, you see that scale where like cocaine takes it to like 10x, and meth takes it like to 15x, and alcohol is like 8x or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was at the level of some of the most lethal drugs, and more so too because it goes into your psyche, the imagery. It's not just a chemical that you're ingesting. It's like the symbology of what you're ingesting. If you're a believer in, well, subconscious, I don't think is very disputed anymore, but like that we live in a myth. We live in many myths that are happening at once. And the fact that I could be taken down by an algorithm made me feel really weak. But what I actually had an amazing conversation with this Jungian analyst, and she said, no, the algorithm is an archetype. It is absolutely meant to, it's like the labyrinth, meant to grab you and keep you in it for as long as possible. So yeah, I think that the validation for some people that's a real even for your au pair, like she knows, she feels like she's going to disappear if she's not on this app. And if you just say that logically, it's like, sounds crazy.
Right.
But that's something embedded deep into her psyche right now.
Right. And it's fascinating because she, you know, every trip that we would go on as a family, she'd ask for time to like rent a car and go to all the places, and she'd pack them all in to get all the photos. And then she'd disperse the photos out over like the next 4 or 5 weeks. Right. But she like, so we went to LA, and it was like, she was on, you know, Santa Monica Boulevard, and then she was at the Hollywood sign, and then, you know, all of these locations, Venice Beach and all these places. And then the photos would sort of come out. And she says, she feels like if people don't see or know what she's doing, like, yeah, she sort of disappears. But then in the same breath, she'll say something like, but then all these people think my life is just perfect, and they don't see that I'm anxious and I'm having a hard time in America. And I'm like, well, you never talk about that. You never present anything but your life being perfect. So this connection that you're having isn't, you know, and I mean, she sees it, but she is so ensnared. And I do think, you know, in her situation, it would have to be just a clean break. I don't think there's really an alternative. I don't even know how she could interrupt this picture perfect sort of, you know, sex symbol persona she has and suddenly be herself on this platform.
And even if she did, even if she did, I mean, because I felt like I was actually being very as authentic as I could be online. You know, I wasn't acting like a supermodel. I wasn't, but even the act of being authentic gets tinged with the performance. I don't know that you can avoid that. So then she becomes the authentic woman who said, no, I'm not. Even that you start competing with other people who are then talking about anxiety, like
who can cry the most on
who
their
can out vulnerability the person that, you know. And so it turns, I don't know how there cannot be some performative aspect to all of it. I just don't think that that's actually the case. As when you're interacting as a person, brands I think can do that just fine. But as if you're trying to, if you're presenting yourself and your life, how is it possible that you're not tweaking to perform, to make it do better? Like, why are you there then, if not for that?
Right. It was, so 2 things that I want to say that are fascinating. Number one, I had an opportunity last week actually to meet the guy who manages, I didn't know who this was, but of course my kids do, Mr. Beast's YouTube account. And so he is like really famous.
I know because of my daughter.
So anyway, he manages Mr. Beast's YouTube account. So he's the
Your kids haven't asked you to get a Mr. Beast burger?
No, I didn't even know that. Okay, I'm in for it, I'm sure. And so he just is the brains behind basically hacking the algorithm. And so he's done so good, and he's made this young man so famous that he was actually tapped to help develop the TikTok algorithm. And so I was having this fascinating conversation with him where he's like, 6 swipes, and it knows you. This algorithm is better than anything we've ever done before. It can nail somebody down to what they like, where they live, what their preferences are, what they think, what they eat for breakfast in 6 swipes. How long you watch a video, do you like it, do you not like it? How fast do you scroll by it? Like, and then that algorithm, he goes, you can live on totally different sides of TikTok. Like my daughter, she'll be like, oh, did you see this? And she'll send me something of like dogs or ponies. I never in my life have seen an animal TikTok, right? Yeah. Or like somebody's like, it's all about, you know, dancing, or it's all about recipes, or it's all about science. Like there's all these different sides and rooms and compartments inside this one platform. And so he's like, the TikTok algorithm is better than anything we've ever done. And it's more addictive, and it's more, like it's just so much smarter. And so it literally is seeing you in this way that is so intense. Yeah, it's so crazy. The other thing I wanted to just say is back to like how we use social media at This Naked Mind, you know, I'm very principled in my approach of things. It's like, okay, what's the outcome? And the outcome is that I want to meet people where they're at with valuable content. If somebody could just be on Instagram and they could have, you know, some moments of giving themselves grace in their conversation around alcohol, or they could find some value. I actually have, I have a social media team, and I'm basically like, this is our goal. If you can take and translate enough value from my books, my podcast, we have meetings where I give content, I provide pictures, stuff like that, to where somebody can change their relationship with alcohol just through our social media account. That's when we know that we've done a good thing. But it is so important for me. Like, I have an Annie Grace author account on all the platforms, but I don't use them because I even imagine it. Like, I was watching, you know, just watching people who just involve it in all aspects of their life. And I'm like, it would feel so intrusive to be like, okay, here I am getting ready for my podcast with Laura McKowen, #Laura.
Yeah, but that's the reality. You know, I love that that's your approach. And look, I think that's a really good use of social media, you know, but you, like, as a user, you can't, it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff. Like, it's just really hard. And I mean, I have one for the Luckiest Club. Like, I don't manage it, but I have a say in how it goes, you know, and it's very similar approach. I have one for my podcast. So I'm not like a prohibitionist. It's just, for me personally, it was too damaging. And what happened when I finally left, and when I had that piece come out, because it sort of expanded the fact that I had quit and left to people outside of my, you know, personal life and like my newsletter or whatever. Lots of other people read it. As I got hundreds and hundreds of emails of people just like with alcohol saying like, oh, thank you. You know, I couldn't figure out why this is so hard for me. And you know, it's something that we know, people intuitively know is not good for them.
Yeah.
You know, there for like Euro pair, I think is probably the norm, not the exception. And it's not that way for everybody. My personal Facebook account, I sort of care less. Like, I enjoy posting occasionally, it doesn't hook me. But I think for people who are using it for, if they're influencers, bloggers, authors, podcasters, they're using it for their own personal brand of a business. I think that's the norm. It's not the exception. And so I think my hope is that we see a shift, we see a shift of people retreating back into more contained spaces, you know, smaller communities, more focused communities. I hope that's what we see in the next 5 years. I honestly think it will be, because I've even talking to you, I'm like, shit, I should just have had someone manage my account. Like, why couldn't I just, no, you know, like, hold the line and just see what happens. I don't know. Before we got on, we were talking about like when something just won't leave you alone.
Yeah.
And you know, like, you're acting like you don't, you know, to this particular thing, you don't really know what it is you're needing to do. What's being asked of you? Let's put it that way. Yeah. What is being asked of me? That when I would put it that way, it's like, what's being asked of me is to get off of here and see what happens.
Yeah. And I love that you're leading this conversation, because for you to walk away from something that arguably sort of built your business, but in a way, and saying, hey, that didn't serve me. I mean, let's be honest, like, alcohol arguably built my
same,
right? But I don't do it anymore. So
I don't do it anymore. And look at, and you're not only fine. No.
Right. It's all good. So let's end with two things, Laura. So first of all, I had a few tips for people to sort of think about when they're judging their own relationship with social media. And do you have any, or I can dive into my list, or you can just piggyback?
Do your list and I can add to it if I.
Okay, so tip number one is just really to curate what you consume. And I would do this based on, literally go through everybody you follow and ask yourself for every single person, like, does this awaken comparison in me? Does this awaken judgment in me? Does this make me feel more than or less than? And if any of those things are true, I would unfollow that. Right? Like if there's any sense of anxiety, like if you are going to follow something, make sure that it's uplifting. Make sure that when you see the post from that page, that person, that brand, that you feel better than you did, more seen, more accepted, you have more grace for yourself than before. So curate what you consume. Number two is just really check your meanings. So like for me, I would see somebody posted, like I would see, for instance, like somebody would post something and then the first person who, it always lists who the most famous person who liked it is right underneath it. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, wow, they're liking their content and like, they must be so much better than me. They must be so much further ahead than me. They must be so much more successful than me. Like just
how many blue check mark comments do they have? Yeah.
Right. Like just like instantly just really be aware of the meanings you're creating because your brain is creating meanings. As you said, Laura, you are seeing more psychological input in one post than most people would see in like months and months, right? Without the internet. And so all of those things, your brain is making meanings, right? The third one I would say is observe your feelings. So Laura and I did a Tell Me Something True podcast, and I guess it would just be the one with Annie Grace, but it was all about this idea of animating energy and how what fuels you on a day-to-day basis can determine the quality of your life. You can certainly be fueled by scarcity and, competition and running away from something or trying to prove something, and you can be really successful. Or you can be fueled by, really gratitude and hopefulness and peace and be even more successful, I would argue.
Yes.
And so check that, like, is it giving you that? What fuel is it giving you? Because for me in the early days, getting on people, seeing influencers in this space and seeing their social media accounts, I'd be like fueled by, okay, I have to do more. I have to post more. I need to be like this so that I can be like them.
Right.
And it was this fuel of like insecurity and by the way, it did get me followers, right? Like it worked, quote, but now the fuel is service. Like it's totally different. Like, okay, I want my accounts to be, if somebody could just change your relationship with alcohol just by following my Instagram account, that is a win. Just by listening to my podcast, that is a win. And so you have to check, I would say, what fuel, what feelings does a stint on social media give you? And I think that's so important. I would actually I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go on Instagram. My goal is 15 minutes. I'd get off 45 minutes later. And I have I say dozens of journal entries. This is how I feel. This is what happened. This is what I saw. This is what meanings I created. I feel a pit in my stomach. It's going to take me not only did I spend 45 minutes when I meant to spend 10, it's going to take me 2 to 3 hours to recover from it.
Yeah.
And by the way, this was me being a consumer of social media. Like that's where I really fell down. And number 4 is just like what Laura's been talking about this whole time. Where are you performing? Where are you not being authentic? Because anywhere you are performing, you are subconsciously telling yourself you're not good enough as you are, and you are destroying your personal worth. You're digging into your personal self-worth on a subconscious level. And number 5 is a little bit of a repeat, but where do you feel comparison? And how much comparison are you feeling? Where do you feel like you're not doing good enough?
I love those. I would just add, when you say, how do you feel? I think it's sometimes hard for people to understand how they feel, but they can check their body.
Yes.
So I knew when I almost instantly, when I fired the app up, my heart would start beating faster. My thoughts would start racing. It would kind of feel good. It's like that dopamine rushy feeling, but then it would feel bad pretty quick. And when I got out, I felt constricted, like my body felt tight. Shoulders were way up here, heart's beating fast. So notice that. Just purely notice, what does it feel like in your body to do? And that's for anything. That's sort of how does it feel to talk to this person? Does it regulate my nervous system, or does it feel tight? off racy.
I feel off balance. Do I feel?
Yeah. So there's that. And then this isn't so much of a tip, but just something a way that I contextualized all of it was I learned about, I don't know if you've read Cal Newport's Deep Work, but he talks a lot about context switching. And when you switch, we're not really great as humans for context switching. So say I'm writing an email and then I kind of, whatever, the way that social media started to work in my brain is it was like every minute or two, I'd get an interruption, like you could check, you just posted an hour ago, go check the comments. Any moment of it was like a tick, just go ahead and do it. So I maybe in the context of writing an email, I would check 3 or 4 times and I would context switch out of that email. So an email that would have taken me 2 minutes then took me 45. Okay, so there's the productivity factor, the time loss, but that was way less what I was interested in. It was more, do I have the capacity anymore to do deep work? And I realized I didn't. I had a hard time reading, getting engaged in a show. I had a hard time continuing a conversation for longer than say 30 or 45 minutes without checking my phone. And as a writer, it felt like these two things can't exist together for me to do the kind of writing that I care about, that I want to do, that I want to see if I can do. I can't have this be in my life. It's like anathema to what deep work actually is. I would so many times I would be frustrated with writing and I would say, oh, just like, you can just go on Instagram right now and post something and you'll get that. Because writing a book is a very solitary liminal space type project. And you got to hang out in there for a long time without being sure if it's good, without getting any feedback, without having any sort of affirmation. I don't think good work comes from, I don't think good writing comes from a space of constant, am I okay? Am I okay? How am I doing? Am I okay? Am I okay? So yeah, I was very interested in the deep work concept. And like, I'm a big fan of looking from the end, of your life and really having that always in the forefront as not a morbid thing, but as a gut check. Do I honestly want to say that I did the math at one point, that I had spent a year plus of my life and over the course of 7 years time wise on social media? Do I really want to get to the end and say I had an amazing Instagram account? I had 2 million followers. Wow. But I wrote books that I knew could be better. Or I wrote the 4 books that were pretty good, but I knew that I had a couple more in me that were really important and I just couldn't do it. And for me, it is that stark. I think it is that stark of an equation.
Wow, that's so powerful, Laura. And I love to like the kind of writing that I want to see if I can do. That's such a beautiful way to think about writing, because it's such a better frame than, I don't think I can do it. Like, let's see if I can. Let's approach this with curiosity. And I love, for anybody reading that book by Cal Newport, Deep Work is one of my all-time favorites. It's so important.
And he is an excellent example. Never had a social media account. New York Times bestselling author, produces just really quality, thoughtful, incredible work. His podcast is awesome. It's called Deep Questions, and he answers a lot of these. It sounds like it's just a productivity thing, but it's not. It's a deeply spiritual practice, as far as I'm concerned, and deep work practice.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and I started to pay attention to stories like that. I remember, like, we can finish up at this, but I remember I didn't tell my publisher or my agent that I was getting off social media, because I knew what the answer, I knew it would be like, no, we got to figure out a way to do this. Right. And I went to, after I had left, it was actually the day that the New York Times piece came out. So I actually felt like, I was going to visit them in New York. I was like,
see this.
Oh yeah, it's like, not only are they going to see it, but maybe this is like softens the news a little bit. Like, look, there's this piece in the New York Times, like it's going to be okay. But I sent it to him as I was walking to my agent's office, and I get in and she's like, so let's talk about this. You know? And we're sitting there in this room with all these amazing authors that are represented by her agency. And I said, look at this. Okay, that one right there, that one right there, that one right there, that. They're not on social media. She's like, yeah, you're right. Okay. You know, it's just like the script that we're following now.
Right. And you can't even have a conversation with an agent without them asking about the size of your platform. I mean, it literally goes into your book proposal.
Oh, I know.
How many followers do you have on each channel?
Oh, I know. But by the end of that, she's like, okay, you know, let's go talk to the editor. She might have questions, you know, and she's doing her job. Like, my agent's just doing her job. But I felt so grateful because my publisher was like, oh yeah, no, I don't care. You need to be well. And if you aren't well, you're not gonna, you're useless to us anyway. So do what you need to do. And I don't think that would be the answer that every publisher would give, but I was very grateful for that. And I think it's absolutely true. I mean, if you think about, I have discovered certain creators and authors on Instagram. Absolutely. Also, like the book I just read that we were talking about before, Matrix by Lauren Groff. I don't fucking find her on Instagram. I found her. Someone told me to read this book.
Yeah.
We have, you know, for people that I guess I'm speaking specifically to people who feel like they have to do this or they won't make it.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily true. I don't want to say that that's true for everybody. I think there are some businesses that they do need it, right? Like the restaurant, like down the street, like she has said, social media has made our business explode. Fair. Like, I don't want to, I'm also in a position where I spent 7 years building a platform. And now I have the privilege to say that I'm going to try leaving. So I'm not saying, you know, that's my story, but I think you got to question, and this goes for anything, all these sort of foregone conclusion stories, these things, of course I have to do this. Maybe not.
So let's end with this, Laura. Let me ask you the question, even though it's not an alcohol question this time, but if you were going to go back in time to Laura, who was in Hawaii and waking up with just a pit in her stomach and under the covers looking at, you know, the account, and you were going to tell her about what life is like now, what would you tell her?
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about that. All right, let's be honest. So I was just saying to my boyfriend this morning, wow, I can't believe I haven't, because he said he deleted Facebook off his phone, and he's not like a big social media person, but I was like, why was it just bugging you? He's like, yeah, I was just noticing. I was like looking at it. He's like, I can't believe you have been off Instagram since the summer. He's like, I can't even believe like how different it is to be around you.
Wow.
Yeah. Because there was always some drama going on in the back of my mind that I was trying to manage. I would tell her, like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be more than fine. And I feel I'm writing this book right now. I feel like I'm able to try to do the type of writing that I want to do, you know? I feel just mostly grateful that I am in my life again. And that can't be overstated. And that there are going to be times when you're going to get afraid and maybe want to backtrack or second guess, and that's okay too. But yeah, that I would say to her, like, just keep going. It's at this point, I can't imagine. You know, it's like that after that first year of sobriety, where like start to see things happen that you couldn't have imagined. The people that are showing up, the way that my just daily mental health is different. I could have predicted some of it, and a lot of it I couldn't have predicted. Like, it's not just going to be okay. It's going to be much more than okay.
Yeah. I love that. Well, this has been awesome, Laura. Thanks so much for coming on and having this totally different type of conversation that I think is so timely and so important.
So good to talk to you always.
You too. Are you ready for a deep dive and truly lasting change? If so, you might consider my intensive program. It's a 9-week self-led program that you can do in the complete comfort of your own home, and it will truly transform your relationship with alcohol. If you want to learn more about this, go to thisnakedmind.com/intensive. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.